Thank you, Dan, and thank you, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's a privilege to be here and attend today's commemoration. While I'm acutely aware and cognizant of those in our community that we've lost, and those whose fate is still undecided in various settlements around the world, for my community, I hope and pray that there is nothing but love, blessing, and prosperity that comes their ways, that we would one day be able to live in the reality of what could have been had a genocide not taken place. I would like to first begin by acknowledging that I speak to you all today from an unceded traditional territories of the Semiahmoo, Katzie, Coquitlam, Kwantlen, Musqueam, Kakade, Tsleil-Waututh, Tsawwassen First Nations, and other Coast Salish people. Unceded means that the lands were never given up or surrendered, and thus I and others are operating on stolen lands. On this topic of strengthening international responses to the genocide, I need to preface by saying that what I'm going to say with a little bit of, basically I need to say that there needs to be a reality check. My community is never ungrateful. We're very grateful for the help that we've gotten, for the kindness, and for various different help that we've gotten over the past few years. We will not forget those who stood by us, but whenever a critical view is expanded or talked about in this situation, we're often branded as ungrateful, which is the first point that I want to make. If a bare minimum of basic needs being met is seen as too demanding by the international community and various state response, then we have a bigger problem to worry about. My community being ungrateful will be the least of that problem. I hope that we can make a distinction between gratitude and the need to survive. A community can very well survive under the most wretched of circumstances, but they cannot thrive. This is what the Myanmar military wants, for us to perish as the poorest, most neglected and isolated group of people. If the international community and states with Rohingya asylum seekers or refugees respond in the same restrictive manners to how the Myanmar military has implemented its isolation, restriction, and systemic oppressive violence against us, are we all that different from the perpetrators? Secondly, whenever we emphasize the idea of Rohingya-centric approach, it is only well received superficially. This includes exclusions in most political, economic, and civic spaces, both internationally and within Myanmar. So in reality, this victim-centric approach is not implemented. And this goes directly to those engaging, involving, and advocating for our community. If your approach to help does not include a Rohingya consultation, it is not helpful no matter how transformative such initiatives may be. If the consultation is done at the very end to ask Rohingya to approve the plan you came up with, it isn't a consultation. I know my community well enough to know that this is all new to us, and things can get really complicated with generations having no access to education in or out of Myanmar. But here's the thing, we did not create this problem for ourselves. There are always a way. The perpetrators are to this day being enabled by various states around the world who could not put aside economic interest over saving lives. It may sound controversial to say this, but please know that my community are the farthest from being entitled. But we are owed the help, protection, and redress to the mass atrocities spanning decades. The international community actually owes us the resolution that centers our agency. It is responsible for the international community to ask us how it could help us start over. This brings me to my last point, which is no people in the world have ever been able to come out of a genocide or other mass atrocities without help, and that help need to be holistically viewed, reevaluated, and carefully implemented. I say this with the utmost respect for those who have worked tirelessly to help our community, that a lot of the approaches are dismissive and disempowering. Our community did not survive a genocide and its continuation within Rakhine State as a fluke. You know how people actually crossed the river in Bangladesh, to Bangladesh, my apologies, in 2017? They built makeshift rafts and fled the violence. Many of them carried solar panel across the river because That was the only way they could actually stay connected with their families left behind in Rakhine State or those outside of Myanmar. Many of them are crafty and they innovate while adapting through restrictions one after another. This is who we are. And to not utilize our skills we harnessed over the past decades to further uplift our community in displacement is such a missed opportunity. The plans shouldn't just be traditional humanitarianism, where our people have no say in how decisions are made. And borrowing from the sociologist Robert Merton to drive home this last point, he put it very well that societal pressure under its structures can lead to 5 modes of adaptation, one of which is innovation, which can sometimes be seen as deviant behaviors. We see a lot of violence that are now quite widespread all over the camps, especially towards women and girls. This is, without any mistakes, coming from the societal pressure and from the lack of human security. It is the increased restrictions, lack of food and water, lack of prospect in life, no educational access, and so much more that would drive people over the edge, and chaos ensues. Humans need very little to survive, but we need more to be able to thrive. The restrictions and intolerable conditions will not help Rohingya repatriate faster or hold perpetrators accountable in full force. In that process, preparing for Rohingya to be able to go back home with their existing skills added to and expanded would be the only sustainable way to repatriate given the conditions are safe and dignified. Allowing Rohingya to use our skills, to exercise our agency, and let us work to sustain the families and community. Let us not internalize the idea of helplessness so that we could actually return home as contributing members of the society with economic agency. This is an important missing piece that I often see. It is incumbent upon the international community to ensure that Rohingya are able to express, critique, and change ineffective decisions involving us, because conditions that lead to human security will lessen turmoil that we are in. We do not want to be refugees. We want to be back in Arakan. But we will not be able to go back home nor flourish as a people contributing to the global society at large without being supported, heard, seen, and cared for in the ways that respect us. We don't stop being respectable humans just because we are in need of help. Help that is needed because the collective complacency took place. So the vital step towards strengthening international response to the genocide is that listening to Rohingya involved more than just sitting down to use our stories for more donations or our pictures. It involves trusting and believing that as unskilled as you see us, or as uneducated as we may be, we know how to survive. We know our community. We know how the issues can be addressed and handled. Help us help ourselves and plan for the inevitable. We may be stuck in places like Bangladesh, Malaysia, Thailand, and others for another decade or longer. So let us use our skills, things that we have perfected like farming for decades, to produce food to address issues like food insecurity and shortage in the camps. We don't ask to be working anywhere else. Exercise of agency such as this can go a long way to help us feel seen and cared for. Dwindling funds by the international community will keep lessening. This is one way to center Rohingya in the initiatives to further stabilize the community and expand our skills. Please know that we are more than capable of helping ourselves. It is up to those who work on our cause to help us in the ways that is uplifting, empowering, and sustainable. Because genocide survival itself is a skill. International responses need to go beyond keeping us alive, even if it's misery that we face every day, but go deeper into our psyche and our abilities as humans. Only when we can situate ourselves as far more than helpless refugees would we have the negotiating power to ensure our social positionality is not at a disadvantage in Myanmar. This includes the international community not excluding us from all its Myanmar's work. It seems simple that the solution to the historical exclusion of minoritized groups is to include them, but it seems so much harder when Rohingya demands their rightful places in these discussions. Please do not make the mistake and think that NUG's progressive language is actually progress. Unless Rohingya actually can represent themselves at the government level with no strings attached or further verification process required, a genocide did not occur out of thin air. We're far, far away from where we would have wanted to be. But here is an opportunity. It's also an opportunity for the international community to do the right thing and create precedents that is rarely seen. Only then would our community be able to thrive once again. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Yasmin, for that incredibly powerful statement.